Okay, we want to turn back now to trade in Washington. Senator David Perdue of Georgia is now a Washington insider, but he comes from the C-suite. He's the only former CEO of a Fortune 500 company to serve in Congress. And welcome him back now to Bloomberg. Joining us from Capitol Hill. Welcome, Senator Perdue. Great to have you with us as always.
Good morning, guys.
So we've got a lot to talk about, but let's focus on trade with China. And let's start with something we've talked about before, which is the farmers, which are hurting, as we know, across the country, not just because of trade, but it certainly has hurt them more. It looks like we're in for a long, hard slog here. How can the farmers survive this?
Well, first of all, I think my farmers in Georgia actually have been very supportive. They're the ones taking the brunt of this right now because of the retaliations from China. But they also understand that in the long term, what the president's trying to do, they fully support, and that is to get equal access into China. I think they're going to stand with the president. They know this is a long slog, but they've done worse before. They've got some flexibility, too. But I think right now they're fully supportive of what the president's trying to do, particularly with China. USMCA is another one. I think this will help farmers in a way, and I think that's been a major step forward in terms of overall negotiations with the rest of the world in terms of trade.
Well, before we come back to China, just on USMCA, since you raised it, yesterday there were some reports we're pretty close to a deal and getting that through. Is that true?
Well, I think so. I mean, what we heard yesterday from the ambassador is that, this adds about $70 billion to our GDP, about 176,000 jobs. It's the strongest labor and environmental piece of negotiation that I've seen in my lifetime, actually. So it's much better than NAFTA was. It does most of what the president wanted to do, and it's a great step forward. We still have some issues. You saw the president release the tariffs on Canada and Mexico in terms of steel and aluminum. That's a huge step forward in terms of good faith. But we still have some further things to negotiate, as Secretary Mnuchin mentioned this week as well.
Okay, when you did run a big company, it was in retail, and we're getting a lot of retail earnings in right now, even today. We got Lowe's, for example, as well as Target. We are hearing from retailers, as they come out with their earnings, that they are really going to be hurt by the tariffs. How would it have affected your business when you were there?
Well, at Dollar General, our mission was, and still is today, to help people get from payday to payday. And when you put tariffs on like this, ultimately those tariffs get passed through to consumers. We all know that. But the question right now is, the American people really know that we've not gotten a good deal with China. They're stealing our technology. They're forcing transfer of technology. They violate the WTO at every turn. They don't give us equal access. So I think most Americans that I talk to out there around the country understand what the president's trying to do. There's going to be pain because of tariffs, but I think China's going to have more pain than we will, and we'll see how they react to this. I'm encouraged, though, David, that right now Secretary Mnuchin and Ambassador Lighthizer continue to have these ongoing conversations with China. I used to live over there. I understand how long-term these negotiations can be at times, and so I'm still hopeful that we'll get to a conclusion sometime this year.
What would change your mind? Like, what would you start hearing from companies? What kind of situation would you start to say, okay, we need a deal and we need it now?
Well, we need a deal. We need it now. I mean, we should have had it years ago.
But you're willing to be patient, Senator, right? You're willing to be patient. You think the public will be patient, but at some point that's going to turn, especially when the price of phone, if that winds up going up, for example.
What's the alternative? The alternative is we go back to what the last 5 presidents have done, and that's ignore China's violations of every normal, reasonable relationship in terms of trade. And certainly since we helped them get in the WTO, it's finally time somebody stood up and required them to comply with normal trade rules like everybody else in the world. They've had a free ride for 35 years. It's time that they come back into the real world now in terms of compliance with just normal trade practices. So I think this is a fight that is worth having. The alternative is to go back to the existing relationship, and that's not acceptable to anybody.
Yeah, certainly you hear that from both sides of the aisle, that China, there needs to be reform in the relations with China. At the same time, you know from having done big deals, you want to give the other side a way out. You want to give them a way that they can say yes. Don't we make it more and more difficult as we add issue after issue after issue with the Huawei issue, which we say is not trade at all, it's national security. Now this morning we have 5 more companies who are saying they have to do with monitoring the Uyghurs. Aren't we making it more and more difficult for the Chinese to say yes to us?
Well, you bring up a great point, David, and yes, you can do that, but I think what we've done already, what the president did by giving this off-ramp, and we talked about that with the president personally when he first talked about putting tariffs on China, was in dealing with the Chinese, you need to find off-ramps. It helps both sides save face, and it gives them an opportunity to actually make concessions without losing face, and that's what this is all about, and I think we'll get back to that. Huawei is an entirely different situation. In many cases, they're a bad actor. They've penetrated our military. There are things that we need to do to stop that right now. This is a national security issue, and it's not the only one. There will be others that come to light as we further open up what we now know about some of their practices.
So finally, Senator, this is not just Chinese trade that you have to deal with. We've had these devastating storms that hit the southeast, including your home state of Georgia. It hurt the farmers and others. Been a sponsor of a bill to try to bring some relief there. There's been a lot of issues with respect to Puerto Rico. Where does that stand?
Yeah, let me put it in perspective very quickly, David. Thank you. It's been almost 8 months since Hurricane Michael came through the southeast. We've had fires in California, earthquakes in Alaska. We've had floods in the Midwest. 8 months. The longest that it took a disaster relief, these were normally bipartisan bills, was about 2.5 months, and that was Hurricane Sandy in New Jersey. It's time to get this done. I think overnight and yesterday we've had major breakthroughs. I think we're very close to getting this done. Senator McConnell, Leader McConnell, has said that we will vote on something this week, so the pressure is on in both the House and the Senate to get this done this week.
Okay, thank you so much, Senator. Really good to have you with us, as always. That's Senator David Perdue, Republican of Georgia. Alex?
Well, still with us is Paul Richard of Medley Global Advisors.